Salutations, my friends, and thank you for tuning in to another edition of Factions of Freedom. I am your host, Noisera, Freedom Faction, whichever one you prefer, and I have titled this episode, Domestic Dervishes, Technocratic Conditioning, and the Resource Wars. We're going to be talking about all kinds of different things, wild and crazy. Jihadis in New Mexico, hackers stealing cash from ATMs, maybe they're stealing it from the banks, and toxins turning up in the public drinking water system. We also had vindication happen this week. Monsanto ended up paying $289 million to a cancer victim. That's right, I call that justice if you ask me. We're going to be getting into all kinds of different things in this edition, but before we do, I hope you guys are downloading our show notes. I take the time to actually put all these notes and things together in a legible fashion for you so we can, not seem so crazy. So make sure you do that. Go to our website, download at the bottom of the episode article, download our show notes, follow along, make sure you get this information. The censorship and everything that's going on, it is imperative that we back these types of things up, and I want you guys to be armed with the information. If you want to think about supporting this operation, think about becoming an exclusive member. You can get this awesome music that you're hearing in the feed as well. It has member-only music, break-free episodes, access to archive seasons, and so much more. Your guys' support helps keep us doing this, helps create the fight. You guys drive this information. So, with that being said, let's start the show. Salutations, my friends. Salutations. Wow. Looks like everything is still chaotic. We have a information-packed episode for you guys. Wow. Trying to set these things back up, pulling up notes from previous episodes, trying to, correlate information, pull everything together. It is wild what we see happening on a daily front. Kind of makes me feel a little bit bad that we don't have daily broadcasts. Maybe we should start doing more mini-casts with all the information that's coming out and the developments that are taking place, because this episode, what we have lined up for you guys, switched up in the ways that it is. It just kind of shows you where we are at a little bit over halfway through 2018. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in to Factions of Freedom. I am your lovable host, Noisera, Freedom Faction, whichever one you prefer, and I have titled this episode, Domestic Dervishes, Technocratic Conditioning, and the Resource Wars. That's right. All kinds of things are going on. You have the TSA's Quiet Skies program, jihadis in New Mexico, drag queen story hour. Yeah, that's right. That's still happening, and we're going to go over that, as well as blue light blinding us. Artificial light causes macular degeneration. We have a whole lot to go over in this edition. But first, I'm going to do a quick alchemist spray. The Pure Heart Alchemy team. They sent me some of their good products, and you guys know how it is. Trying to cover all this information, putting it together in a coherent fashion. Sometimes you need to slow down, approach things, and lay it out the right way. So I'm going to go ahead and get some of that goodness in here. Hopefully we have some of that. And like I said, this is the Pure Heart Alchemy Oracle Communication Spray. I tried wisdom, but I feel like I definitely have more of an affinity towards communication. I wonder why. So, with that being said, I hope you guys are paying attention now more than ever with the attacks of censorship, what we see happening on the internet, what we see happening with social media, what we see happening in society. I hope you guys are paying attention to what we're doing with the website, with the exclusive membership, break-free episodes, censorship-free feeds. We're going to be starting to come out with other content. I don't want to release too much or say too much because, knock on wood, that's going to trigger somebody or some kind of part of the operation is going to hiccup, and we don't want that. No jinxing. So let's get the episode started. The previous episode where we talked about the majority report, we dabbled a little bit into the TSA's Quiet Skies program. Now, why is that important? Well, recently I took the trip to Seattle. I had a great time. I, however, did not come into contact with a TSA agent whenever I boarded my flight. However, I did come into contact with some of the people that they hire, the TSA agents. What I find strange is just not the open disrespect, but, you know, everybody there kind of seemed a little bit drone-esque. The guy that was, you know, punching our tickets, he sounded like he was a robot. You know, the girl that was that checked in some of our bags, you know, she looked like she wanted to fight me. I was like, I don't know what's going on here. You know, I'm sorry, I'm going somewhere and you're staying here. You know, the TSA agent that's running the body scanner, you know, it looks like he's dead inside. But, you know, the point is, what's going on is basically a violation of our rights, a conditioning, if you ask me, to where, you know, people are being used to being processed like this, treated this way. And now you have the TSA where it has come out with this secretive domestic surveillance program where they're putting air marshals in the sky. And some of the stranger things that they have these people paying attention to, you know, if people are on the train, what triggers in-depth surveillance or behavior that they monitor, you know, are things like whether or not the passenger fidgets, or whether or not they are using a computer on the flight, or whether or not they stare off into space, if they're touching their face, exaggerated emotions, whether or not a subject has lost or gained weight from the information provided to authorities, whether or not the subject has facial hair, tattoos, or piercings, whether or not they slept during the flight, whether or not they used the bathroom on the flight, how they were picked up when they arrived. There's all kinds of different things going on. I put this article up August 15th. It's from Mint Press News, a repost from Zero Hedge. It says the TSA defends their Orwellian secretive domestic surveillance program. The TSA has broken its silence to defend its alarming domestic surveillance program called Quiet Skies, which allows the agency to use a team of armed air marshals to follow, track, and surveil virtually anyone. TSA Administrator David Pekoski told CBS News in a recent interview that the program, quote, makes an awful lot of sense to be able to look at some risks that we think exist on certain flights and put in air marshals on those flights. We were one of the first to report on the Quiet Skies program at the end of July after the Boston Globe uncovered it in a lengthy and revealing expose. The secret program was set up to monitor U.S. citizens with no prior record and who don't result in red flags being raised at the airport. The people surveilled by this program are, according to a TSA memo cited by the Globe's original article, quote, not under investigation by any agency and are not in a terrorist screening database, setting a number of privacy red flags. I could agree. Now, why are we talking about this? Well, Sweden is burning. You have youths, migrant youths, or even, you know, controlled people in Sweden burning down cars. In New Mexico, we now hear that there are jihadis that have been here for nearly 20 years, and they had a compound out there in Taos. Now, there's a lot of different things going on. This is what I mean by the domestic dervish, just all kinds of craziness happening. You have cops breaking windows to detain civilians in America. 300 priests accused of child sexual abuse. These kids in cages that people still don't care about. You know, so I'm glad that we pay attention to these types of things, and so much. You see, you have people being criminalized for regular behavior, while all this kind of lawlessness and craziness is basically just being allowed. It's wild. It really is wild. You know, let's see if we can get up this clip for you guys of Sweden burning. And what you're hearing right now are what seems to be like firecrackers or something going off. And for audio listeners, you know, these are car alarms going off, citizens filming this, people decked out in black, literally walking up to cars and setting them on fire. You know, and what's crazy is this wasn't the only place that it happened. It didn't only happen in Sweden. Some of the reports that came out regarding this indicated that it happened across multiple cities, coordinated. It happened in Hjallbo, north of Gothenburg, Frölundatorg, Trollhättan, Malmö, Helsingborg, Nordost, Frölunda, all kinds of different places. I have no idea where that is, but the fact that it's happening in this fashion, in such a coordinated fashion, indicates to me that this is organized. This is planned. Craziness. And this is what I mean by the domestic dervishes that we have to deal with. So while people are literally being criminalized for boarding a flight, you have this kind of chaos happening everywhere. I don't really report on it. I think that we might, in the future, because, you look at this type of stuff, they call you a racist or an Islamophobe or a xenophobe or, somebody that's ends up being a racist, Not really. You're looking at people that are out there committing any kind of domestic terrorist act. If you have somebody out there that's, destroying my property or destroying other people's property, how long is it until they come to my property? So I'm not going to have that. And if we're not talking about this type of behavior, it's only going to perpetuate. Now, let's talk about something else, because there's so many different angles to look at with this while we're talking about criminalizing common sense is the best way that I can describe it. What I'm learning is common sense is not so common. Here in New Mexico, we have an Islamic compound which had jihadis that were released on bond after charges of Islamophobia and racism. So because, they thought that the client was black and Islamic, that, they didn't treat this way. Now, to me, this raises a number of red flags, because you have a dude out here in the desert with 11 people and children, like, training with guns. And it just gets blown over. You have all kinds of different outlets that reported on this. So I'm going to go through and read some of these headlines and the outlets that they're from, so you, the listeners, can get a good picture of kind of what's happening. Not only the media manipulation, but the perception on something that is actually pretty crazy. So right here from Freedom Outpost by Pamela Geller, she says, unbelievable, Sharia, New Mexico. Islamic compound jihadis released on bond after charges of Islamophobia and racism. Judge releases New Mexico suspects accused of child abuse planning mass shootings after defense argues that they're victims of discrimination. Prosecutor, in that previous article was from Sign of the Times, and this next one is from Freedom Outpost by Tim Brown. It says, prosecutors, the boy died during Islamic ritual ceremony in a New Mexico jihad compound. And this is from Reuters, their top news section. It says that the New Mexico family believed the dead boy's spirit would lead attacks. This was also said by the prosecutors. And the prosecutor also says that the abducted boy died in an Islamic exorcism ceremony in the New Mexico desert. 3 jihadis were training abused children for school shootings, and now the judge releases them on bond. This is by the Gateway Pundit by Jim Hoft. And CNN says that their lawyer is saying that the kids were trained to protect the compound, not for school shootings. And on the same day, this is also by CNN, a sheriff walked out of an interview with CNN after defending police actions at the New Mexico compound. Taos County Sheriff Jerry Hografy walked out of a CNN interview after defending his decision to not search a squalid New Mexico compound for a missing boy. Now, what I find crazy about this in so many different ways, because this raises so many different red flags for me, we're dealing with the immigration invasion, the Muslim migration. We're dealing with potential terrorist acts. We're also dealing with separatist societies that are not down to commingle. Because I am all over the place in Albuquerque, I see all kinds of different people. Let me just tell you, from Koreans to Native Americans, to the Japanese, to Mexicans. I see a lot of different races. Now, at the schools, I am starting to see a lot more people of Middle Eastern descent. I will say it at that. And what I mean by this is we are seeing different cultures that are bringing their culture with them. And some of these cultures are not necessarily compatible with America. To stop beating around the bush, what I'm saying is we've already been infiltrated. What I'm saying is we already have terror cells here. What I'm saying is we already have agents, sleeper cells, and people who are already operating here. That is not a joke. Okay, New Mexico is not like a lot of other places. We have a lot of military action, and we have a lot of intelligence agencies here. What am I trying to say? What I'm trying to say is they're allowing these people to create these networks. They're allowing these people to operate, to go about their business. This is why they have certain protection. This is why they have these things going on. This whole thing screams of a massive issue, and it's getting blown away over racism and Islamophobia. Now, a few weeks ago, I talked about how there was a leftist Antifa in, I forget where, with an arsenal of weapons. Now, why is this happening? Why are we hearing about people who keep getting caught with arsenals of weapons? Why are there still mass shootings happening? Why are there still attacks being planned? You see what I'm saying? Like, these people are being allowed to operate here. And these attacks, they're going to happen. What's happening? I've talked about this before, and unfortunately we don't have the time to go into it, but what we call these now democratic socialists, these Antifa people, and the people that have infiltrated our government and our society, as well as all of this stuff, the idea is to break down borders so people have no nationality or have no identity or nothing that they're attached to. And this is the whole idea with migration and everything else that's going on. We're losing our identity in the sake of open hands for everybody else. The point I'm trying to get at by looking at this kind of domestic dervish, Sweden burning, jihadis in New Mexico, cops breaking down windows in New Mexico, and I'll get that clip up for you guys, is we're seeing what happens whenever we're becoming criminalized. We're seeing what happens whenever civilians are becoming criminals. So right here, I'm going to play for you guys this clip of a cop ripping a civilian, also in New Mexico, from his car because he didn't have a seatbelt, and he actually had to rip the seatbelt out to remove the citizen. Let's take a listen.
Recording. We're not doing recording.
Well, maybe. And I don't want to say this is how all New Mexico cops are, but the cops out here, you know, they'll tell you to your face. You know, they have no problem.
I'm recording. We're not doing recording. Sir, that's fine. We're recording also. I need you to open the window. You guys have not.
They'll tell you what's up. They don't care. No? Well, for the sake of time, we have to move on. So while people are being criminalized, while regular citizens are being criminalized and treated this way, people that we would hope have our best interest at heart and hope to look out for us, we're finding are slowly the ones that are the first to betray us. And now we have 300 priests who have been accused of child sexual abuse.
A highly anticipated grand jury report detailing alleged sexual abuse by hundreds of Catholic priests across Pennsylvania is set to be released later today. Our Natasha Brown joins us live from the CBS 3 News SAT Center with more on the report that is said to be more than 800 pages long. Good afternoon, Natasha.
Well, Jim, good afternoon. Yes, this is expected to be a 900-page grand jury report which outlines the investigation into alleged child sexual abuse in 6 Pennsylvania Catholic dioceses. According to the Attorney General's office, the report is an account of widespread sexual abuse by more than 300 priests throughout Pennsylvania dioceses. The church Church says the grand jury's inquiry dates all the way back to 1947. Court action has delayed the report's publication. Some clergy members say they are wrongfully accused and want to challenge the allegations. Meantime, the state Supreme Court says they'll consider their claims, but for now, their identities will be concealed. On July 27th, the Pennsylvania Supreme Court ordered the grand jury report to be released by 2 p.m. today, August 14th, with redactions in sections where litigation is ongoing. State Attorney General Josh Shapiro had written to the head of the Roman Catholic Church, Pope Francis, on July 25th, requesting the pontiff direct church leaders to stop, quote, efforts to silence the survivors. Now, of course, we are expecting a 2 p.m. press conference from State Attorney General Josh Shapiro after the report's been released. We will bring you the very latest on this much anticipated report coming up throughout Eyewitness News beginning at 4 p.m. That's the very latest for now. Live in the SAT Center, Natasha Brown, CBS 3 Eyewitness News.
Thank you, Natasha. Well, now we hear that the Pope is trying to silence people who are coming out to speak out about him and his pedophilic organization. Franken Pope, Pope Francis, why would you do that? His one of his right-hand men, Cardinal George Pell, is actually under trial, I think, in Australia. And just the other day, an archbishop, I think, it actually might have been from Pennsylvania, was facing charges. What we're seeing now is the collapse of the Catholic Church. Now, I wanted to prepare a specific segment of the show where we talked about Nostradamus and things like that, but unfortunately, we don't have this time. But to give you a glossed over version of what we'll be doing in the future, basically around this time period over the next couple of decades, what we will be seeing is the collapse of the Catholic Church. So what I'm going to do is we're going to go into depth about this here report about the 300 priests who have been accused of covering up thousands of child sexual abuse cases in Pennsylvania. This is an article from the anti-media team. They put it up August 14th. It says, on Tuesday, the Pennsylvania Supreme Court released a grand jury report detailing over 300 clergymen accused of misconduct over 70 years, including abuses against at least 1,000 children. Why is this important? Because when people tell you that pedogate isn't real, when they tell you that that's fake news, that's because they've been misinformed. They don't want to look at these types of things. Why is this continuing to show up? Now, this plays a huge role in where we're going to pivot next, where we talk about things like Drag Queen Story Hour, the cult of relevancy, and what's happening. Because we see this kind of moral dilemma, this moral ambiguity happening in America or in society. Ambiguity, moral ambiguity. As we see this moral ambiguity forming in America and in society, things are replacing it. It's this concept of fake love, of fake understanding, of fake compassion. Now we're talking about Pope Francis, the Catholic Church, what should have been, it should be the moral compass for the world. We're seeing that collapse, and what is being replaced with it is things like this transgender movement, things like the LGBT movement, to where it's all accepting, and so it becomes this huge philosophical discussion about love and what it is and all these other things that are going on. But basically what's happening is the turning of the age, a different perception. Some people have called this the paradigm shift, the age of Aquarius. All of the things that we see taking place, they have a very, very unique foundation and what will come after. So let me get into this, and then we'll move on to this Drag Queen Story Hour. It says, State Attorney General Josh Shapiro said during a press conference that the report shows a, quote, systemic cover-up by senior church officials in Pennsylvania and at the Vatican. The Washington Post reported, quote, the abuse scarred several dioceses, he said. The cover-up was sophisticated. All the while, church leaders kept record of the abuse and cover-up. So they literally kept records of like who was with who. The disturbing report took 18 months to complete and covers 6 of 8 counties where the dioceses are located in Pennsylvania. So Harrisburg, Pittsburgh, Allentown, Scranton, Erie, and Greensburg. The nearly 1,400-page report says that because of the extensive cover-ups, many of the alleged perpetrators will not be tried in court or face repercussions. Quote, as a consequence of the cover-up, almost every instance of abuse we found is too old to be prosecuted, the report says. Worse, there are likely thousands of victims, far more than the 1,000 identified in the report. And I could not agree more so. What is happening in the Catholic Church, as I said before, is that systemic child abuse. That is why Pedogate is so important. That is why looking at Pizzagate is so important, why we cover human trafficking. All of this stuff is important. Satanic ritual abuse. Somebody recently came out today, actually. No, it was not today. The article surfaced today, but it was it was sometime back in June or July. Sarah Ruth Ashcraft, she put up a post. Let's see if I can get this up for you guys. She posted on Twitter about this because, again, you have people coming out in the industry saying that these types of things are happening. And while this might not be related to the church, we have yet to hear a response from the Vatican about these recent allegations. So let's get this up for you. And you guys can go read this on the page, but it's another actor calling out the satanic Hollywood pedophiles. And this is by Collective Evolution, but the post by Sarah Ruth Ashcraft was put up July 23rd. And it says that this is me at 13, the age I was when Tom Hanks purchased me from my father for sex as a disassociated mind control doll. I wonder how much he was paid. I wonder how much money my father made for breaking my mind and selling my child body throughout my life. Will I ever get to know? Now, these types of tragic stories, because we've covered things like satanic ritual abuse, child sex abuse, human trafficking, and all this other wicked stuff that goes on, this is very real. But because of the mindset, the cult of relevancy, because we want to feel appreciated and we're not really addressing issues that require real attention, we're allowing things like this.
Hi, my name is Miss B, and I am a drag queen, and this is Drag Queen Story Hour. Give it up for yourself. Yeah, this is the land of all, and everyone fits in here. Do you see that? They're being nice to the bullies. What color is the frog? Green. The reactions from the kids are hysterical. Does anyone know what a drag queen is? No? Do you know what a drag queen is? But they warm up, they get to know who I am. A drag queen is a character you create to express your feminine side or any other side of yourself that you'd like to explore. Yeah, you could be a drag queen superhero. Yeah. As soon as you start singing songs and having fun together is when they really let loose. You put your right hand in, you put your right hand out. Drag Queen Story Hour helps teach kids to accept themselves and let them know that it's okay to be themselves and to be who they are and to accept others.
I like the book Neither because it's about being nice to other people.
We do a lot of LGBTQ books, also about gender. This actually touches base and explains a drag queen from, like I said, a kid-friendly perspective. I do! Raise your hand if you like arts and crafts! I do! The reason why I do Drag Queen Story Hour is to have fun with the kids, get to know them, and also make an impact on them. Because I want them to go out there and embrace the world, and I want them to change it, because they are our next generation. And the itsy bitsy spider went up the spout again. Yeah, give it up for yourself.
All right, so I'm going to cut that off right there. What we're beginning to see, and this is what I'm trying to talk to you guys about with this cult of relevancy, is the false enlightenment. This concept of the land of all. I understand it. It's the oneness concept. I totally understand that. But what we're seeing right now is a politically correct awakening. You're only allowed to be so woke. I'm sorry I'm not woke enough to understand this. I'm sorry I'm not woke enough to get these types of things. And what happens when we buy into this, where everything is trendy, like I said, the cult of relevancy, where we have to pay attention to what's happening, we allow everything. We have no filter. We have no discernment. And that's what they're planning on. This rainbow flag only allows you to be there if you abide by it. It requires obedience. It's crazy. And to put a point in this, and then we'll take a quick break, we're seeing this crazy inversion happen to where the pedophiles that are being, cut out from the church, we're allowing other types of pedophiles to teach our kids. So how does that work? How has society gotten to this point? There are certain types of enlightenment and certain types of truths that people need to find themselves. But if you lead them to it, it's not the same. That's what I mean by this politically correct awakening. This is the false enlightenment. You can't teach these certain things. These kinds of understandings are supposed to be inherent, but whenever it becomes mandated or controlled or commercialized, then you're selling somebody an idea. These are truths that people have to come to on their own terms. But ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to be talking about Amazon and Alphabet and Microsoft pledging to fix healthcare. Hackers wanted to steal cash from the ATMs. Are they stealing it from banks? Does that mean they're stealing it from you? Who knows? And as well as blue light blinding us. We're going to talk about this and more on the other side. Ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned. We'll be right with you. Salutations, my friends. Salutations. Wow. Looks like everything is still chaotic. We have a... Didn't I tell you this was an information-packed episode? Sometimes those breaks aren't enough. Sometimes it's never enough, but you do what you can. You do what you can for however long you can until you can't. Thank you for sticking around. Thank you for being here as we document the chaos that seems to be unfolding every single week. I don't understand it. I think it's kind of wild, you know. This isn't something that we've really talked about a lot. This Alex Jones thing, him basically getting kicked off of all these platforms, his deplatforming, his depersoning. You know, that's some pretty serious stuff. And say what you want about Alex, man, and InfoWars, but were it not for him, I don't think a lot of people would know that there's more stuff going on and then say, you know, I don't want to hear him and then come up with their own solutions and come up with their own shows, come up with their own networks. That's certainly what I did. I heard him. I didn't like what he was saying. I did kind of feel that it was kind of rowdy. So I said, you know what? I'm going to go over here and create my own network, talk about my own things, and have my own news. I respect what you're doing, but, you know, there are other topics. But ultimately what we're seeing happen right now with InfoWars and other alternative media is censorship. We're seeing the technocrats rule. You know, we've gone over this time and time again. A lot of you guys have had great responses when I asked what were your opinions about the censorship. You know, these are all private businesses and they're allowed to have these types of things, no doubt. But this is why, you know, we need to figure out other alternatives. And I want to address this real quick, you know, because I heard this earlier this week. You know, do you know how silly it sounds to say, let's go make our own platform? It's not that it's silly, but it's much more complicated than people think. You guys listen to me. I have a pretty decent sized audience, but I don't think everybody's going to sign up for a platform if I decided to make it. The whole point about having something that's publicly accessible, a public utility like these types of things, is so that people can come together and share in the marketplace of ideas so that we can discuss the wide variety of topics that are available. Now, do I think certain people shouldn't say certain things? Yeah, no doubt. But I'm not saying that they should be able to, that they should be taken away, that they shouldn't have the ability to express their opinions. The whole reason that we have alternative opinions is so that we can form our own. And when you take other people's ability to speak and stand for themselves away, you effectively become the very thing that we should all be fighting, authoritarian, tyrannical control. You are inherently a child of God and you have the ability to say things. And if we really diminish that and we continue to abide by this politically correct awakening, we will only be playing into the machine's will. Now, what I see happening across the board is a manipulation of information. I think that's been consistent throughout everything. That's the whole reason why I'm here, is to point these types of things out. You can go look up things like the Smith-Mundt Act, Operation Mockingbird, as well as the Council on Foreign Relations. They recently had a meeting where they talked about, yes, we need to use propaganda against the American citizens. Yes, this is something they want to do. So when you have organized media coming out and literally using the same talking point, it's crazy. Now, for myself, because I am focused on alternative news, I don't really necessarily care about Donald Trump and all the other things that he's doing. But I also see what this means for everybody and everything else. What is happening to society is a massive conditioning. This is why I am so on it for people to be individual. But I definitely did not mean to go into this rant where we're talking about this type of stuff. But I think it's imperative that people understand Facebook, Google, Twitter, Instagram, social media is literally put here to engineer your mind. It is literally put here to control what you think, manipulate what you see, and craft your consent. We've talked about this time and time again. And whenever they remove alternate voices like Alex Jones, like myself, like the Hagman and Hagmans, like all these other people, that's what the internet is for. It's supposed to be here for all of us. But apparently, you know, the internet isn't free. Apparently, social media isn't free. Now, this is something I wanted to talk about while we have the time here to get back into point and kind of, you know, bust back into the show. Recently, Max Spears had his laptop wiped by authorities before they returned it to his family. And if people are unfamiliar who Max Spears is, he's basically a ufologist. I talked about how I did an episode about this forever ago, about his murder. It was really crazy and random. He was literally in like a cafe coughing up black liquid, and people think he got poisoned. But, you know, now we're hearing basically like almost a year and a half later how he's having his laptop returned, wiped out with the information. Now that's sketchy. Basically what we're seeing right now is, again, more the manipulation of information, whatever he has out there, whatever was available publicly that they didn't delete. And this is why modern day book burning is a very real thing, why we need to archive the information is for things like this. The whole idea behind keeping certain information secret is so that you can dumb down the population. You see, but if the population doesn't even know they're being dumbed down, how can we move forward? Speaking of which brings me to my next point. blinded by the artificial light. New research determines that blue light from screens can lead to macular degeneration.
Hey, more proof that the blue light emanating from your phone or tablet is dangerous. Researchers from the University of Toledo say that light on your mobile device and laptop can damage vision or worse. It can accelerate blindness. Experts say avoid browsing digital devices in the dark to protect your eyes. Hey, more proof that the blue light emanating from your...
Now, I find that hilarious. Obviously, this is something that people have been aware of for quite some time. But look at how they give us the devices and then say, hey, this is kind of bad for you. They let kids literally grow up in the dark drinking Mountain Dew, playing Xbox Live until their eyes bleed. And then they say, hey, light from screens can lead to macular degeneration and blindness. They literally give you a flashlight for your front screen so that when you turn it on at night, it literally blinds you. But don't worry about that. Now the research is coming out. You see, what we have to look at with the technocratic conditioning is how these people have literally somehow inserted a device that has more power than your government, than your family, than your conscience, than your mind. It has more influence on you than anything we could ever comprehend. But we don't care. We just want it. We just want the better version. We don't care. We don't pay attention. We don't see how this is literally, and I've talked about this before time and time again. For new listeners, go back and find some of the episodes where we've talked about the techno-sorcery surrounding technology in your phone, and how we've made a metaphysical agreement to have this little pocket radiation stick that is depreciating our life and knocking down our lifespan. We have made a metaphysical agreement in the terms and agreements to take these things. We know what's happening, and we can't turn around and say, oh, well, I didn't know. No, you knew. We all knew. And now we're hearing that hackers are planning to steal from cash machines within days. The FBI has warned of imminent mass attacks on the world's ATMs. Now, why are we switching up from this, from talking about your eyes literally being caused, having macular degeneration, blindness from your phone? How much influence does technology have? This is a scam, if you ask me. Now, you take that money, money's traced, bro. Money is traced. And is it the money that's important? Go ahead and take it. How many times have we talked about universal basic income? You have Stockton taking part in it, Sweden taking place in it, all kinds of different people abiding by it. It's a very real thing. You have Elon Musk endorsing it, Richard Branson endorsing it. Free money. And you know what comes with money? Strings. And unless you're willing to cut those strings and do something else, you see, it becomes your master. So are they really stealing from you, or are they stealing from the banks, man? Is this your money, or is this somebody else's money? I think this is a good thing, if you ask me, but I also think it's going to come with its own set of problems. Now, this is something that's kind of been predicted in that show, Mr. Robot. I haven't seen the precise episode, but I've definitely heard people talking about this, the idea of them literally spewing cash out in an attempt to try to crash the economy. Now, this is a Hollywood-esque version of such a thing, but if more of these types of things happen, you've got governments paying billions of dollars for more endless wars, all kinds of other stuff. What is going on with our economy? But don't worry, you have Donald Trump saying it's the greatest it's ever been. That's how depressions work. That's how crashes work. So this is a multi-spectrum thing that I think we need to take a look at. I put this up August 13th. It's by the Daily Sheeple. It says hackers to steal millions from cash machines within days. The FBI has warned of imminent mass attacks on the world's ATMs. America's intelligence chiefs have warned banks of a major hacking threat to cash machines worldwide in the next few days. The FBI sent out a confidential alert on Friday to warn that cyber criminals are planning a global cash-out scheme using malware to take over ATMs and steal millions of dollars. Banks were warned that they could fail or fall victim to an unlimited operation in which millions of dollars could be withdrawn from cash machines. Smaller banks with less sophisticated security systems are thought to be most vulnerable to an attack using the jackpotting technique, the Daily Telegraph reports. The warning said the FBI has obtained unspecified reporting indicating cybercriminals are planning to conduct a global automated teller machine, an ATM cash-out scheme, in the coming days, likely associated with an unknown card issuer breach. The website reported that criminals could create fraudulent copies of bank cards by installing their data on reusable magnetic strips. I'm going to stop you right there. And we'll come back to that because they are 1,000% correct. I've had a conversation with a few people about this randomly, believe it or not, about how check when you go to the ATM. You can actually see the card reader. You pull that thing out, see if it is actually the one that should be there, because some of the ones these hackers have today, they can put it on top of the card reader at any ATM and it scans or takes a picture of your information, and when you pull it out it acts like nothing happens, but they are wirelessly receiving your information. And you can look this stuff up on the black web on how to do it. You know, people do this all the time at like ATMs, gas stations, Sonics, McDonald's, any kind of stop in place, man. It happens. It's very real. And this is just what happens if they get your number. We recently suffered an attack, as not recently, but towards the start of the year, whenever we had all our hack attacks happen with the website going down and some of our Blog Talk Radio stuff being messed up. We suffered like $400 of a loss. I don't know how it happened, but these types of things can occur. So getting back into this article, it says that the FBI warned that at a predetermined time, the co-conspirators withdrawn account funds from ATMs using these cards. Historic compromises have included small to medium-sized financial institutions, likely due to less robust implementation of cybersecurity controls, budgets, or third-party vendor vulnerabilities. The alert said attacks could affect banks all over the world, with British banks with large overseas interests, including Barclays and HSBC, thought to have been made aware of danger from the jackpotting technique. Earlier this year, it was revealed that a coordinated group of hackers had stolen more than $1 million by hijacking cash machines in the U.S. The separate attacks represented the first widespread jackpotting activity in the United States, officials said in January. The heists, which involved hacking ATMs to rapidly shoot out torrents of cash, were across the United States, spanning from the Gulf Coast to England. Now, again, what I believe we're seeing is more of an attack against stability, more destabilization. What's going to happen with that? But while you have people literally trying to hack ATMs, you know, we have reports coming out now of what everybody already knew, you know, of Google tracking you. So how does that work? How are they able to have such a uncoordinated attack, or a coordinated attack of hack attacks of ATMs all over the place? They're not able to pinpoint it, but don't worry, Google is always tracking you.
Is Google tracking your every move according to an investigation by the Associated Press? The answer is, well, yes. It found even if you turn off your location history in Google Apps, the tech giant can still track your location. For example, Google is able to store a snapshot of where you are when you open its Maps app. Or if you just do a simple search that has nothing to do with your location, Google can pinpoint your latitude and longitude. But with the bad news comes some good news. To actually turn off your location tracking, Google says you have to go to your Google app called Web App and Activity, and that's where you can turn it off. It's actually located right above the location history option. What's in this Google?
I doubt it. I really do doubt it. These authoritarian technocrats, they want as much information as possible. That's how Orwell designed it. That's how Orwell wants it. That's how it's going to be. They tell you that they're going to take it off, but that's not going to happen. This information came out earlier this week that Google is tracking you, and I think a lot of what this is, when you have mainstream media reporting on these types of things, is them trying to cover their tail. They want to try to be, they have to have some kind of credibility in people's eyes, in the public's eyes, so they have to disclose these types of things. To us, people who are in the know, who are very well aware of this, this is nothing new. Unfortunately, this is actually old. But what this means for having this kind of unilateral surveillance on us as a population shows the amount of power that these people have. And I've talked about this time and time again, the power of algorithms, the power of the technocrats, right? A few weeks ago, we talked about artificially intelligent doctors in Iowa, as well as the, the Democratic congressional candidate, I forget his name right now, the Pennsylvania congressional candidate, calling people irresponsible breeders. They have to have the information. You also have 23andMe teaming up with Big Pharma and getting 5 million users genetic profile. They have to have this information. Oh, but they can't stop hackers from, with a somehow pre-disclosed plan, they can't stop hackers from spewing all this money. Maybe because hackers don't use Google. That's the point, is to get everybody on this technological domestication, this technocratic conditioning, this plantation to where we're all subject to their rule. You see, it's deeper than a lot of people think. And now we have I've talked about this before, you know, how other companies are getting involved in healthcare. We now have Amazon, Alphabet, and Microsoft pledging to fix healthcare. So you have 23andMe teaming up with GlaxoSmithKline. You have Microsoft getting in medical marijuana, Monsanto being bought out by Bayer. You have all of these changes happening. You see, this is what I mean by the technocracy. This is what I mean by them having the information. This is what I mean by having a device that supersedes government, supersedes local government, supersedes your family, supersedes God, supersedes everything. Because the technocracy, the data, you are your data, and that's what they need. The Chinese are literally using artificial intelligence to dictate their foreign policy. You have IBM running algorithms on effective ways to provide healthcare to people. You have people trying to boost their brain power with implants. So when you have companies like this that have this much power, their next step would be to control your health. This is population control. This is social engineering on a whole nother level. Let's get into this article. This is by Christina Farr of Technocracy News. I put this up August 15th. It says Amazon, Alphabet, Microsoft all pledge to fix healthcare. The problem is the lack of open standards around health data is a huge barrier for them to get into in the $3 trillion health system. The patient problems existing before big tech got involved were minuscule by comparison. Before I get into this, I think it's important that I point out a few weeks ago, actually last week into the start of this week, we heard about how now Facebook wants your, what was that? Now we hear that Facebook wants your banking data as well as your medical history. Why do they want this? Well, hopefully we can read this article and get into it. It says there are many broken things around the U.S. healthcare system, but one of the biggest problems and most overlooked is that the patients still find it too hard to share their medical information between doctors, especially those who work in different hospitals. It is a huge problem for so many reasons. It makes it harder for consumers to access the high-quality care, and new patients who walk into hospitals are like strangers. Caregivers won't know if they have an allergy or a chronic disease. Some of the largest technology companies in the world are undertaking a new effort to fix that, and they have good reason to do it, as a lack of standards around health data is a huge barrier for them to get into the $3 trillion health system. On Monday, Alphabet, Amazon, IBM, Microsoft, and Salesforce spoke out at an event in Washington, D.C. called the Blue Button 2.0 Developer Conference. These companies are rivals in important ways, so it's a strong signal that they came together on this issue. Here's the joint statement. We are jointly committed to removing barriers for the adoption of technologies for healthcare interoperability, particularly those that are enabled through the cloud and AI. We share the common quest to unlock the potential in healthcare data to deliver better outcomes at lower costs. To address the problem, these tech companies are proposing to build tools for the health community around a set of common standards for exchanging health information electronically called FAHR. The government and the private sector have tried to fix this problem for decades, spending billions in the process. Unfortunately, the bulk of that funding was spent on moving doctors' offices from paper-based systems to electronic ones and not on data sharing. So basically what we're having is an upgrade to their health system. How information is accepted, how information is received. But what happens whenever information is everywhere? Like I said, you have 23andMe taking people's genetic data and then teaming up with a pharmaceutical giant to they're going to offer you solutions. This is another form of gene therapy. You have doctors in Iowa using AI algorithms to, look at people's eyes. Again, macular degeneration, blindness. We have to look at where this goes, what this means for us. You see, people don't understand. Well, maybe people are beginning to understand the depths at which we're up against, the people that we're up against, and the systemic chaos that won't be stopped. Like I said, now you have Facebook saying you need to comply or die. Work with us. This is that technocracy. Speaking of healthcare, speaking of authoritarian control, the internet just crowdfunded the release of 4,358 CIA mind control documents. And for more news that you won't get on corporate-owned, CIA-controlled mainstream media, including Fox News, it looks like the people have been able to raise enough funds through crowdfunding to pay for a Freedom of Information Act. So I'm going to leave this there, and hopefully you guys can, get a little bit curious. Go see what the information is about. Go look at it yourself. You see, because this is why they need the information. This is why they conduct these experiments, so they can test them out on us. They say that it's for our benefit, but I think everybody is a little bit cautious about allowing this much control. I mean, think about it. We've already confirmed that certain times when you're speaking next to your phone and an ad pops up, that this is the technology that they have. What happens whenever they have access to your medical information? I've talked about how, Tucker Carlson did a report on the patents that Google have, where they'll send you information about your baby and its activities and how you're not being a good parent by not attending to your child. What happens whenever it says that you're not giving yourself the proper medication as provided by Big Brother, as provided by Google, as provided by these technocrats? We have to understand that the conditioning that these people are having us operate in, this is so that they can understand us and categorize us. That's what I mean by technocratic conditioning. We listen more to our phones and to this system than we do ourselves. But we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to be talking about some of the toxins that are turning up in public drinking system. Monsanto paying $289 million to a groundskeeper. Unfortunately, he was a victim of their glyphosate, and how a MIT computer model predicted Agenda 21 in 2050, what they call World 1, the declining population and the end of civilization. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. don't stop believing. Yeah. I'm not going to do it because I'd hurt your ears. But I'm glad to see that you're still here. So thank you for helping make history. Thank you for being a part of this. You know, every single episode is a test. It's an experiment. It's a chance to do it right. And, you know, we have so many, not only do we have awesome guests on our partner show with On the Wake Up Radio, Fellowship and Freedom, but we also have amazing content that at times I don't really feel worthy to be covering. And this is sometimes why in a rapid fire way I have to go through so much, is to kind of explain what I mean with just the general terms of the show sometimes. Domestic dervishes, technocratic conditioning, and now the resource wars. We have to understand, I'm trying to paint for you a picture. We have to understand the complex times that we're in. People think just because we're here that there's very subtle things that people can do to make a better impact on the world. And what I find myself doing these days is really trying to not necessarily change my behavior, but be very, very well aware of my impact, not only physically, but mentally, spiritually, emotionally, and so many other different ways. People don't take the time to really ask themselves about whether or not they're affecting others, about whether or not they're influencing their surroundings. And it's this kind of lackadaisical approach to actually being influential and stepping into who you can be that really does a disservice to everyone else. We all want to see how awesome you are. We all want to see how beautiful you can become. So why don't you show us that? But to get back into the show, I told you guys we were going to be talking about the toxins that are turning up in the public drinking water system. And this is, again, what I mean by making very subtle changes in society and with ourselves so that we can we can operate optimally, so that we can become better versions of ourselves. We have to acknowledge that there's a problem before we can come through with a solution. Unfortunately, people are still depending on the very same people who have given them the problem to also offer them a solution. And this is why, you know, you see me posting about things like water filters, system cleanse detoxes, all kinds of other different things to basically reboot the body, because what we've been told, it's a lie. But let's get this clip up for you guys. This is a video from the Associated Press where they're basically talking about some of the toxins turning up in our water, outside of fluoride, outside of atrazine, and outside of all the other things that's there. Let's take a listen.
When Lauren Ware and Dan McDowell bought their house in 2012, they were unaware of the danger pouring out of their faucet. The water in their suburban Philadelphia neighborhood was contaminated by a family of chemicals called perfluoroalkyl and polyfluoroalkyl substances, commonly referred to as PFAS. PFAS have been used in everything from non-stick cookware to firefighting foam, and have been linked to a range of health problems, including some cancers. It's that foam, used at 2 former military bases 20 miles outside of Philadelphia, that is being blamed for the water contamination.
The government knew that these materials were hazardous. They knew that they had been used. They knew they seeped into the water, and they didn't tell anybody about it until it was revealed, and they had to.
Private wells around the bases were condemned, forcing residents to hook up to the public water system. But the source of the public water was also contaminated, forcing water authorities to spend millions of dollars on filtration. PFAS contamination is a national crisis affecting over...
Yep, they're right. You know, just the other day I was talking about how Michigan has contaminated water. You know, 119 people have died in Flint since their water crisis. You know, water is a very big thing. If that's the majority of our body composition and it's tainted, you know, what chemicals are we ingesting? This is a massive thing. At the start of the week, I had run a sustainability questionnaire, a series of questions that I asked you, the listeners, with your feedback and your thoughts about these types of things. And the reason I say this is because we have to know what is in our water table. We have to know what we're ingesting, because while this may not affect us, this is something else that I've always gone on and on and on about. What this really does affect is our children. What this really does affect is the next generation. It may not show up immediately. You know, it may not show up to offend and hurt us, but for the generations that have to deal with these things systemically, they will be the ones that suffer from it. And I think that's something we really need to pay attention to. So again, you know, it goes back to what we're consuming, being conscious of our intake and how this all works. But let me get into some of these sustainability questions that I asked for you guys, and then we'll get into some more of these articles. You know, Monsanto paying that $289 million because that's a victorious thing. That is awesome. We're seeing big pharma, we're seeing big agriculture get hit. Boom. But what this means is their damage is already done. So when we have analysts talking about resources running out and MIT computer models looking at the declining population and the quality of everything, they do have some of this stuff based in fact. Now, to this questionnaire, I asked people, is the world overpopulated? 64% said no, 36% said yes. I then asked, does the earth have enough resources to sustain humanity? People said yes. A resounding 69% said yes, 31% said no. So yes, you guys are correct, or yes was the majority. I also then asked, do you plan on having children? 67% said yes, and 33% said no. That's perfectly fine. And then I asked the question of, which feels more appealing, reform or conserve? We had 602 votes for reform with 375 votes for conserve. I also asked you, if you guys had any other options. Some people said stop the greed, rebel, colonize space, anarchy, adopting, no restrictions, autonomy, transform. And one person, which brings me to one of the reasons that I wanted to talk about all this stuff with the resource wars and sustainability, they brought up Thanos. Now, I haven't seen Infinity Wars, and I haven't seen the story, but I know half of the population gets killed. Now, his justification behind this is for balance, it's for harmony, which again, we talk about sustainability, population, control, monitoring the earth. One of the kind of side remarks I got when I ran that questionnaire was overpopulation is a myth. You can fit the entire population in New Zealand. The reason I'm trying to throw out all of these different examples when examining this type of information is because it's imperative that we take all these different types of things into consideration. I've talked about the scarcity agenda, where they promote austerity to where being poor is cool, to where being trashy, to where, not having the best anything, to where that's becoming cool. I understand minimalism. I understand wanting to reduce your impact on the earth, but I also think a lot of this stuff is pre-programmed. And a lot of this stuff is actually being put into people's mindsets because of some of the older models that are out there, like I said, with this MIT model out there, some of the conditioning that has taken place, like I said, in society, and everything else. This all plays into Agenda 21, Agenda 2030, and Agenda 2050. These people conducted these types of these operations and these studies way before we got here. They foresaw this. So while we're sitting over here with our phones thinking we're current, these people were in the background in our history planning on these types of things. So if we're already living in 1984, what do you think this is? Okay? Now, let me get back into some more of these sustainability questionnaires or questions, and then we'll get into these articles. The access, or if your lifestyle became taxed, would you pay for it? No. My lifestyle's already taxed, and I'm already paying for it. That's the best way to describe it. I said, who should dictate access to natural resources? And that was actually a pretty tough one. We had 419 for government and 264 for corporations. Not a lot of people wanted to cover that. So I offered the option of saying, what was your option? Some people say that the majority vote by the citizens themselves. Some people say neither. Some people think that it should just be the people that control these types of resources. I agree. And one of the responses that I got was people like us. While that's a good statement, a valid statement, what about the people, the upper echelons, the elites, the people who think they have the authority to rule over us? What if they're the people like us? You see, we have to be very careful about who we give our power to, and the control of resources is very important. This is why you have Nestle over here literally bottling lake water to sell it back to a town. What is going on with our water is vastly important. What's going on with our food, what's going on with humanity in general is important. And that's kind of why I'm following the Space Force so intently, because while we're literally over here hearing these people talk about creating a whole new branch of the military, Earth is undergoing crazy amounts of attack. We've talked about how the radiation from Fukushima, it's still beating up the West Coast, and how it's showing up in fish and wildlife, plant life too. But don't worry, we're going to build that Space Force. Monsanto was forced to dish out $289 million for lying to the world about cancer and glyphosate. This is from the Event Chronicle. It's a repost by Aaron Walia of Collective Evolution, and this was put up August 13th. It says, for years, we have been writing about Monsanto's RoundUp herbicide, among other products of theirs, and how it is causing cancer and other fatal diseases worldwide. They're right. We're finding out that their glyphosate is also in children's food. It's crazy. We've presented the science, and countless publications and scientists from all over the world have been making this clear for years. The science is overwhelming, as well as the scientific fraud, yet it has taken decades upon decades for the World Health Organization to finally admit that yes, it's a carcinogenic. Now, a groundbreaking settlement has just been made public. As Reuters reports, the case of school groundskeeper Dwayne Johnson was the first lawsuit alleging glyphosate causes cancer to go to trial. Monsanto, a unit of Bayer AG, following a $62.5 billion acquisition by the German conglomerate, faces more than 5,000 similar lawsuits across the United States. Boom! 5,000 lawsuits. Stick it. You stick it, Monsanto. We're coming for you next, Bill Gates. The jury at San Francisco's Superior Court of California deliberated for 3 days before finding that Monsanto had failed to warn Johnson and other consumers of the cancer risks posed by its weed killers. It awarded $39 million in compensatory and $250 million in punitive damages. As Robert F. Kennedy, Jr., a lawyer representing Johnson in the case, declared on Twitter, the court, quote, awarded $200 million in punitive damages against Monsanto for acting with malice and oppression. When you sit down in front of an ordinary people like jurors and present the evidence that a teenager could stifle through and draw obvious conclusions. This verdict proves that when ordinary citizens, in this case a jury of 12, hear the facts about Monsanto's products and the length to which this company has gone to buy off scientists, deceive the public, and influence government regulatory agencies, there is no confusion. Ronnie Cummings, the international director of the Organic Consumers Association, said, "This is victory. This is victory. This is vindication. This is awesome. $289 million. This is great. But this man now has to unfortunately use this money to fight back the very cancer provided by these people." And that's why it's crazy to think about, because we're basically seeing what happens whenever, these companies, they don't care. But don't worry, we're going to trust Alphabet, Amazon, and Microsoft to fix healthcare. We're going to trust Elon Musk, who's over here, at parties, panhandling to people, asking the Saudis, asking the Goldman Sachs people, asking for all kinds of different investors to take it private, to take Tesla private. We're going to trust Elon Musk to fix the Flint water crisis. We're going to leave it up to Domino's to fix potholes. What is going on? These corporations only have it out for themselves. So while this is vindication, figuring out that glyphosate causes cancer, and Monsanto paying this is one step. This is only one step, and I'm glad for it. So I'm going to go ahead and clap for that. Congratulations, Mr. Dwayne Johnson, for sticking it to Monsanto. Now, again, like I said, the impact of these types of corporations, the impact of this type of stuff and how it affects us, right? Analysts warn we're running out of resources needed to sustain life on the planet. Now, I posted this, and I actually caught a lot of slack. A lot of people said, oh, this is fear-mongering. Oh, you know, this is fear porn. I specifically try to cover some of the stuff that doesn't that doesn't get reported like this, so that people don't say that. But I think that it's imperative that we talk about these types of things because, again, this plays into Agenda 21, Agenda 2030, Agenda 2050, and the concept of changing sustainability. This is why you have people like that Pennsylvania congressional candidate calling people irresponsible breeders. We have to understand what's going on. But let me get into this. This was originally posted by Daisy Luther at The Organic Prepper, but SHTF Plan decided to repost it. And she says, have you ever heard of Earth Overshoot Day? No, neither had I. It's the day each year that we use up the resources that can be renewed within that length of time. This year, it was on August 1st. So, for the rest of the year, we're living on borrowed resources. It reminds me of the ceremony or the economy and quantitative easing. There's only so far we can push until there's nothing left from which we can borrow. While the analysts say that this is all related to climate change, a theory that many find dubious, one thing is absolutely certain. They're right about the looming shortage of resources. And a lot of it is because Westerners are so incredibly wasteful as a society. Look at water, for example. Droughts have stricken us here in parts of the United States for years, and blogger Michael Snyder has suggested it could quickly lead to a return of the Dust Bowl condition similar to those of the 1930s. South Africa has barely managed to push back day zero, the day in which Cape Town runs completely out of water, using stringent rationing methods. Even parts of the U.S. that aren't in drought conditions are seeing frequent water crises, with algae blooms, toxic runoff, chemical spills, and tainted municipal water. Doesn't it seem to you that things are happening a lot more often? Well, they're right. I'm going to take a quick pause there because just the other day, we talked about how New Jersey wants to tax water. California has their straw fine. You see, they're literally trying to figure out controlling water. They've also urged people in California to ration power. Let me get back into this. It says the global water shortage is coming fast. At this point, approximately 40% of the entire population of the planet has little or no access to clean water, and it is being projected that by 2025, 2/3 of humanity will live in water-stressed areas. But most Americans are not too concerned about all of this because they assume that North America has much more fresh water than anyone else. And actually, they would be right about that. But the truth is that North America is rapidly running out of water, and it isn't going to change, and it's going to change all of our lives, like the good people over there in Flint, who are still suffering, who don't have clean water, as well as the people in Kalamazoo, Michigan, who stated that they have a state of emergency due to their water issue. Now, today, the most important underground water source is in America. The Ogallala Aquifer is rapidly running dry. The most important lake in the western United States, Lake Mead, is rapidly running dry. The most important river in the western United States, the Colorado River, is running dry. You see, we're talking about conservation. We're talking about running out of resources, declining population. People in Flint are literally developing skin rashes, lesions, hair falling out, neurodevelopmental diseases, degeneration happening because of the water, because of its contamination. Like I said, you're not having to deal with this so much as your children. Oh, don't worry. Don't think about it. We have enough resources. You're correct. If everyone is conscious of what they do, and most people aren't. How many lights are on right now in your house as you're listening to us talk about this type of stuff? Now, again, and because this happened in the same week, and I think it's crazy when this type of stuff happens, and this is from Freedom Outpost by the same blogger that the previous author mentioned, Michael Snyder. He put up this article. It says, World 1, an MIT computer model predicts dramatic drop in quality of life around 2020 and the end of civilization around 2040. Why is this important? Why are we reading about two correlating articles talking about the end of civilization? Because where have we heard this before? People think, oh, it's the end of the world. Oh, you know, it's things are, the world's going to end. It's the end of an age. It's the end of a time frame. It's the end of a certain way of being. It's the paradigm shift. It's more than people can really perceive. And because we get caught up in so many simple ways to fix it, so many different ways to look at things, we can see between the lines. What I'm saying is, this is what they mean by sustainable development. This is what the New Age people talk about as the end of an age, the age of Aquarius. Civilization will end. Rome fell. It didn't happen overnight, but everything ends. And that's what I was trying to illustrate at the start of the show when talking about the immigration invasion, the planned attack to destroy borders, to lower quality of life everywhere. That's the whole point. Now, if you're listening to this now, go back and find the other episodes where I've talked about this before, because that's the eventual plan. They're planning for this controlled collapse. You see, this isn't something wild. You see, like I said, Nostradamus really did predict this. He talked about, the ending of the age. He talked about, what did he call them? Locusts that can drop bombs from the sky, what we call drones. Like, there's so many different things that I really want to do the justice of breaking it down. But let me get into this article by Michael Snyder, where we're talking about the resource wars, because, again, this is imperative that we understand how not only was this predicted, but it's also planned. It's actually guided. This is somewhat meant to happen, because they can control the outcome. And I've talked about this before, the concept of rebirthing America, or at least rebirthing the entire world. And this is the one world religion, the one world government. But they have to at first destroy everything. And I think that's where we're at right now. We're at a period of denaturalization and deconstructivism. But let me get back into this. It says, is humanity approaching a major turning point? A computer model that was originally developed in 1973 by a group of scientists at MIT is warning that things are about to dramatically change. If computer predictions are accurate, our standard of living will start to decline dramatically around the year 2020, and we will witness the end, quote, the end of civilization around the year 2040. Of course, this is not the first time ominous predictions such as this have been made about our future. For years, experts have been warning that we are heading for severe shortages of water, food, and oil as our limited natural resources begin to run out. For years, experts have been warning that our economic model is not sustainable and that we are heading for a historic collapse. For years, experts have warned about the alarming increase in seismic activity all over the planet and about the proliferation of weapons of mass destruction. Society is crumbling all around us, and the elements for a, quote, perfect storm are definitely coming together. If you guys didn't find out, you can go back to our Instagram page and find in the highlight story in our deep reads section, I put a post up there to where it's over 100 different patents from the 1800s where they have been able to create and modify the weather. This is also, again, something else that Nostradamus predicted. People thought that playing God wouldn't have any kind of repercussions, but I don't know what to tell you. This is probably why the elites that we report on, who have these bunkers underground in mountains, on the side of rivers and islands elsewhere, this is probably what they're doing. They're looking at numbers and graphics and models that we don't necessarily have access to. Money can open up a lot of doors. Getting back into this article, it says, so maybe this computer model is onto something. The name of the computer program is World 1, and it was originally created by Jay Forrester. The prediction came from a program nicknamed World 1, which was developed by a team of MIT researchers and processed by Australia's largest computer. It was originally devised by computer pioneer Jay Forrester after he was tasked by the Club of Rome to develop a model of global sustainability. So I'm going to point that out real quick. If you got a pencil and a piece of paper, write that down. 1973, Jay Forrester's over here messing around with the Club of Rome. Okay? And for people that don't know what the Club of Rome is, you're basically talking about the Council on Foreign Relations. You're talking about another one of these, the Trilateral Commission, the United Nations, another one of these organizations that's controlling things in the background. So back in 1973, they're talking about global sustainability. Again, this is that word, sustainability, with Agenda 21, global sustainability. This is what they want. However, the shocking result of the computer calculations showed that the level of pollution and population would cause a global collapse by 2040. So when we have chemtrails literally spraying food, and then we have, in the same year, wicked tornadoes, wicked hurricanes, crazy monsoon seasons, floods, all kinds of stuff that I've called the ricochet effect from messing with the weather. When we have that kind of stuff pop back, what do you think that means? We've only had 119 documented cases of the pollution of the population that's happened in Flint since 2014. Who knows how many other people are victim to it? This opioid crisis is a real thing. You have people that it's crazy. And I'm not trying to scare people, but I'm trying to say we're only seeing a certain sliver of reality through our phones. We really need to pay attention to that. So when I'm talking about Agenda 21, Agenda 2030, and Agenda 2050, I'm trying to illustrate how there is a systemic, step-by-step plan happening to where we are heading towards planned austerity, planned poorness, planned chaos. Okay, I'm not saying this stuff because I'm pulling it out of the ether. I'm pulling it from the years of research that these people have conducted and that they're actuating today. That's why Donald Trump is here. He is here to collapse the country. He's the bankrupt president. Like, that's why he's here. He's the Trump card. He's supposed to come through with capitalism, thinking that it's going to work. They're going to crash the economy, and then they're going to come through with something like communism to offer it. That's what Agenda 21 is. That's what Agenda 2030 is. That's what the one world government is. That's what these people are doing. The whole idea is to get us all on the same page with one world currency and a one world religion with a one world government. Things are so, it won't be so bad. That's what they'll say. But they'll have us to where we're all kind of in a third-class citizen state or a second-class citizen state. It's crazy. But let me get back into this article. The fact that the Club of Rome was behind Jay Forrester's work is a major red flag, because David Rockefeller and other globalists founded the Club of Rome, and it has always been used to further the globalist agenda. Could it be possible that this computer model is a glimpse into the kind of future that the globalists believe is coming? According to the model, life as we know it is about to change in a dramatic way. So when we're talking about resources running out, when we're talking about what is happening to the environment, how these people are slowly in the background paying attention to these types of things, understand that this is planned. Look up something called thunderstorm spiral. It's basically where they're expecting to take on massive populations of people in tent cities, in impoverished areas, in slums. They want it to where quality of life is so bad to where we are living in some kind of slum, to where we won't really have the finances or the ability to rise up. That's the whole part about the pacification. That's the whole part about a lot of the things that these people have in play. You see, that's what I mean by the denaturalization. They want to get us all to a level to where we're not a threat. It's crazy. It is wild to think about how they're literally using the resources around us, everything that we take for granted today, and weaponizing it against us. I mean, they're already trying to sell air. That's crazy. You know, I've talked to some of the bigger pages too about the concept of selling free energy, you know, and how it wouldn't even, how you could use pre-existing systems and attach this new technology to basically hijack these signals and the energy to enrich ourselves today, but it's because these people want the the dollar, the money. They want to be able to tax you, tax your lifestyle, have that level of control. And that's what I mean by looking at the inner workings of things like Agenda 21, reading between the lines. It's literally a manuscript for how they want to control us every single kind of way. However, that's all I really have for you guys. I want to say thank you for tuning into this edition of Factions of Freedom. This is Domestic Dervishes, Technocratic Conditioning, and the Resource Wars. However, that's all I really have for you guys. I know I kind of went over a whole lot. I know I was jumping all over the place, but it's because we're jumping back into the saddle trying to illustrate all of the different things that we find ourselves up against. Seattle was great. It was nice meeting everybody and taking a break from things, but can you really take a break with everything that we are facing these days? So, I really want to say again, thank you guys for tuning into this edition. It is always a pleasure and an honor to be here. It seems like every kind of week we're dealing with some form of censorship. If you guys want to help the operation, think about becoming a Patreon exclusive member. You get access to episode-free shows, songs that you're hearing such as now, archive content, and so much more. We have all kinds of different things lined up in the pipeline for you guys. And really, it's your support that keeps us going. So make sure you're downloading the show notes. Hit every single link in the description bar below. Other than that, I'll see you next week. Stay vigilant, expose lies, and share truth. This is Noisera, Freedom Faction, out.